exact conjunction to Mars while we're doing this, maybe a little after.
There's no room to be boring around the astro world. Like we're just not a boring folk. You know what I mean? I feel like as we like choose times to collaborate and do all of this stuff, like even to spite ourselves without pulling elections, you know,
maybe. Yeah. I love it. And I'm such a Mars girl with like my sun in Aries, moon in Scorpio, Mars exalted in Capricorn. I love it.
You are living that life. All right. Good morning, everybody, and welcome back. This is our third session of the year 2 of the YouTube Academy. And I'm pumped. We're back with Miss Jamie Lee for some question and answer on the luminaries, only our like most important lights in the whole chart in the sky, like just in general, you know. So thank you, Jamie, for being here and being back with us.
Oh, I'm so happy to be here. Thank you so much for having me, Stormie. And I just love what you have created through your incredible vision of bringing astrology to so many people. It's so inspiring.
Thank you so much. It is this is what happens when Uranus touches your sun, or even if you're like, listen, I will die and explode if I don't get out here and create things. And it just turns out that I can't wait. We were talking a little bit before about how you experience something and then you start to refine it. And I feel like year 2 is like, I can see these areas that are super refined to help our students in our community. And these other areas where I'm like, what am I going to do with that? You know?
Yeah.
So it's neat to have everybody back and see how this is going to be refined. I mean, I can't imagine year 3. I'm like, that thing's going to be well lived.
Epic.
Yeah, exactly. So Jamie, between last year and doing your class and now, like, what have you been up to? What are you doing?
Yeah. Oh my goodness. This has been such an exciting year. This was, and getting to, share about the sun and moon on, Stormie Grace YouTube Academy was such a highlight for me. It was like, I want to like pinch myself. I'm like, is this real? It's just like a dream come true. So I'm so honored. And I'm so honored to even be talking to you. It's like such a dream. So really, I spend a lot of my time in one-on-one sessions, giving astrology readings. It's just my all-time favorite thing to do is to hold that deep space and empower people to live their most conscious, empowered, inspired, magical lives. That's what I love to do with astrology, is support people with that. And I've been teaching astrology some now. I have a foundations of chart reading course that's happening right now, but it's kind of ongoing. After it finishes, I start another one. And so it's been really fun.
Yes. Wow. And I'll make sure you guys that links to not only to Jamie's website, but also to her foundations class are down below in case that's something that you feel like that you're interested in or you resonate, because another very big piece of the Academy was to bring teachers in front of our students so students could find their teachers, so if you resonate with Jamie, then we definitely want you to get connected and get the vocabulary of astrology under your belt. And you're doing all kinds of sound stuff.
Yeah, and I actually have my moon gong with me today. Actually, I'm going to pull it a little closer so you can see the glyph. Now, unfortunately, on Zoom, the sound doesn't come through good, but you might be able to see the moon kind of symbol on the gong here. I don't know if the lighting is coming through good, but I have gongs that are the frequencies of the planets. They're the notes, like NASA. If you go to NASA on YouTube, you can hear the sounds the planets make, and they make the same sounds. I listen to the NASA clips and I'm like, that is the tone my gongs are making. So I have a moon gong and a Venus gong, and I just go and bathe people in moon and Venus vibes, and it's amazing.
So tell me about that. I know we're supposed to be talking about the sun and the moon, but now I'm distracted. Okay, Mercury and Gemini has been distracted. Yeah. What do you mean? Like, how are you bathing people in the sound? What does that look like?
Yeah. So essentially, I always say it's like an amazing adult nap. Like it's like adult nap time. Everybody comes and you bring all your cozy stuff and your yoga mat and blankets and pillows and get super, super cozy. And essentially through, just through inner energy, through entrainment, when we're bathed, when we're around another energy or, two people, it can be people or just anything like the gongs. When there's two different energies that are at different vibrations, either one's going to go up, the other's going to go down, or they'll meet somewhere in the middle through what's called entrainment. But with the gongs, because they're just, they hold the frequency, they're such pure frequencies. When you're around them long enough, it's like every cell in your being starts vibrating at the same tone as the gongs. And so what it is it's just incredibly balancing and harmonizing. And people wake up and they're like, I feel like a whole new person after. Usually most people fall asleep and they're like, I feel restored. I feel like a whole new person. And it puts your nervous system in a deep state of rest. So in parasympathetic nervous system functioning. So people just go in this deep, deep rest. But sound waves, I've learned through the sound work I do, sound waves move 4 times quicker through water and fluids than air. And, our bodies are mostly water and fluid, very lunar, very moon, so the frequencies actually move through all your blood, your lymph fluid. And it's amazing. It will get stagnant energy moving. So if there's a energy blockage in one of the chakras, it will get energy moving. And it's incredible. People wake up and they're like, I feel like a new person. I feel restored.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And I mean, I haven't done any of the sound stuff with you yet,
Yeah.
which means I'll be coming around. But I know when I've walked like into a metaphysical store or walked into a space where there's been like a drumming ceremony or something afterwards, how delicious like that feels. Like you can literally like feel like you're walking into a force field of a different vibration and what that's doing to change you.
Yeah, absolutely. And they do offer the properties or the healing benefits of the planet. So my moon gong, and people, it's amazing. People will tell me this without me even telling them about it, who have come, because sometimes people just come and I don't have time to explain everything. And the moon gong, so just like the archetype of the moon, is very nourishing. It's nurturing and nourishing. And people will say it feels like I'm being held by, the divine mother, the mother. So there's that being held and nurtured and nourished. And also with the moon gong too, oftentimes it gets people's emotions moving. I mean, I love this. I've had men come to sound healing sessions and they're just tears the whole time. I can kind of just see their like bawling, crying, and it's so beautiful. And they'll tell me after. I've had like one beautiful man who came, he's like, I've not cried in 10 years. And he had no idea that would happen. And so, it really does hold the qualities of the moon. And then my Venus gong, it's a very, Venus being the harmonizing principle. So it's very harmonizing and balancing. And so you put the moon and Venus together. I mean, it's just magical.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. It just even sounds good hearing about it. But I'm also a Taurus. So I'm like, wait, did you say things feel good?
Yeah, totally.
I would love to be a part of that whole thing. So beautiful. Well, thank you for sharing that with us. And are you doing any of your sound baths or things like that online as well? Or is this just more of the in-person experience?
Yeah, right now in person, because the technology to get it to sound really, really good online is a bit tricky. So I'm trying to figure out the whole technology piece. But gosh, when you're there, I mean, you feel it kind of moving through your body. So maybe an astrology retreat one day.
Yes. Did you guys hear that? I think she said we're going to have a retreat. So I really like that.
That would be amazing.
So thinking about all of these things before we jump into some questions that are up here, but when we're thinking about these, the luminaries in the chart, where today, like, do you think people should be or could be focusing on making sure that their alignments are right and that they are holding their sun and moon spaces within themselves, just as we're coming together today?
I love that. So this is something I've been working on in my class. So right now we're actually going through all the luminaries and the personal planets. And I have this handout that I've created, and I would actually be happy to share it here too as well. I could pull it up or even share it somehow, but I have, every archetype. So when we're talking about the planets or the signs, but in this case, we're talking about the planets, the luminaries, our bright lights, all the energetic expressions, and not energetic, but actual literal physical expressions as well, they're all very multifaceted. So each archetype, the sun and moon, we can embody and express them in very healthy, conscious, empowered ways, or we can embody and express them in more unconscious ways, or maybe more unskillful ways that actually create problems in our lives. And so there's a spectrum of expression. Everything is multifaceted. And that's why I love whenever I hear someone say, they're like, well, let's just, for example, me, I have my moon in Scorpio. I have my moon in Scorpio. So I'm just always going to be that way. I'm always going to have that problem in relationships. I'm always like, oh, no. There's many different octaves of expression. That's one way, for me, that's one way I'm relating to it, or you, that's one way you're relating to it. And there's many different ways. And so I like to speak to perhaps the more, what would be, I call them like conscious empowered expressions or unconscious expressions. And then to notice, do I have some of those unconscious expressions? And we tend to all do. So there's no judgment, there's no blame, there's no shame. But once we're aware of it, then we can choose a more empowered expression. So I don't know if that might be a great place to start, is maybe kind of look at the maybe spectrum of some conscious and maybe unconscious expressions of each of the archetypes of sun and moon.
Yeah. No, I think that makes a lot of sense. And one of the things that I teach and talk and use in my life as well is, especially through the lens of the moon at a personal space, it's like, if you don't nurture the moon, you'll flee, right? Like there are these fleeing aspects. So it's like, okay, well, what are the characteristics of your moon? Like you said, those conscious, unconscious expressions, and where are you falling in that? Because you do want to make sure you're nurturing it. And also in those sun qualities, like it's the more seen part. So are you making sure that you're allowing that to be seen? Because if not, I think what it can create is, I call it like, it's just like sunshine constipation, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where it is like, you got to get out here. Come on, you got to come and get out here. So making sure that you're seen in your public space and in that sunlight enough, but then also making sure that you're nurturing in that quiet space along those archetypes seems like a great way to be.
I love that sunshine constipation.
Right.
I love that. That is such a brilliant way to say it, because it's so true. Like, and I'm a Leo rising, so the sun is like the ruler of my astrology chart. But with the sun, it's like the sun outside. When the sun's shining, there's nothing you can do to block the sun out. If you're outside, of course it can be inside and have like maybe like blinds and things, but exactly. It's like, are we giving ourselves space to shine and to be seen? And then also the moon plays in. It's like, are we nurturing that safe container to do it? So we don't, so we don't go too far out of our comfort zone. It's like that perfect balance of having that nice, like that womb, that nice nurturing container, and then creating that space to like let the sun fill that.
Absolutely. And I think that this works too very well in relationships. My parenting style really shifted because of astrology. When I realized my one daughter has a Cancer moon, and what does she need to feel nurtured? What makes Cancer feel full? And it changed the way that she felt more comfortable to expressing her Sag sun. And that my youngest daughter, she's got a Taurus moon, so she's always trying to have a snack with me, right? But let her express her Leo sun in a different way. So noting what the moon sign is for the people in your life, this gives us, I think, quick access to understand how they need to be nurtured, like what would light
Yes.
them up. And then naturally that the light from within, you know what I mean? We can express that outward. And I know we've got the reflection, the moon is the reflection of the sun, but it's also like, I feel like at those lower, more visceral levels, if we're not nurtured here, like accessing sunlight is a dream.
Yes, that is so true. And the moon really is like foundational. And then, you create the foundation to stand on, or the night's container to be in, and then the sun can shine. And I love that you talked about parenting, because my background is being a school psychologist. I worked in the schools for 5 years, offering counseling and working with parents and teachers and students. And that's when I really got into astrology, because I realized, oh, I have a counseling and therapy background. I was like, if I just understand my students' moon sign, particularly, and their Mercury sign in the school, the learning setting, I'm like, I can actually provide support in a much more efficient way. And one of my best friends, and I know she'd be okay with me sharing this, when she had her son, her first son, she is like all fire, water. She's got some air in there. She's got no earth in her chart. I mean, of course, we're all signs of the zodiac, but she doesn't have any major placements or planets in earth signs. And so for her, oh my gosh, she's so creative and adventurous, and can just, spontaneously just drop everything and go off on an adventure. She's amazing. But structure and discipline is not her jam. And she had a son who is literally all earth, and particularly he has a Virgo moon. And I looked at his moon sign when he was born, and we really talked about, one, you can look at it, this beautiful being is here to teach you structure, and some of the structure and the discipline that she's always wanted to create. And when we talked about all of his earth, and especially his Virgo moon, she's like, oh my gosh, I'm not structured, I'm not disciplined. But you know what, knowing his moon sign, she's been able to provide that for him, and really cultivate the sense of routine and structure. And this is the routine today, and kind of keeping a similar routine. And it's been amazing to know her son's moon sign, because very, very different than her fiery moon.
Absolutely. So once you know that, like, it really becomes, it's a game changer. Like, I just think astrology is a game changer in general.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's even helped me in my own personal relationships, because I have a Scorpio moon. So I feel very deeply, very intensely, and it's by my IC. It's in my fourth house by my IC. So actually, most people don't really see my Scorpio moon essence. They don't realize the level of depth and the sensitivity. And that's a big learning lesson I've learned in my life. And sensitivity is beautiful, but I am like painfully sensitive, and I feel so deep, and I want to go deep with people. In my Scorpio moon, I kind of want to like merge, and it's just very deep and bonding and intimacy, it's so deep. And then, dating someone, this was just another example, dating someone with an Aquarius moon, which squares Scorpio. And I love Aquarius energy. It's actually my descendant. I am just so attracted to people with strong Aquarian signatures. But for him, with his Aquarius moon, he expresses emotions in a much more detached way, a little more detached, and can take, and it's actually something oh my gosh, such a brilliant teacher for me to kind of be able to detach a little bit and get a little more Aquarian, expansive, big picture, kind of energy, to have that objectivity, because my Scorpio moon can be, very irrational, and it's a beautiful thing, like very not rational. So to have that Aquarius moon that's very just centered and have that rational objectivity, it was a brilliant teacher for me. But also I would get so frustrated, because I felt like he couldn't meet me in the emotional depths. And I felt like he was being insensitive and like not understanding my emotions. And it was actually causing a lot of like, you don't understand me. And you're feeling insensitive, or I'm feeling like you're insensitive. And to really just kind of be able to talk about our different moons, was really, really helpful. So he actually did learn how to express a little more emotional sensitivity to how I'm feeling. And I learned how to take a little more objectivity and let's zoom out and that beautiful Aquarian, big picture, expansive energy. And so it was such a great knowing that was essential. And it really did help me take things not so personally when I'm like, he's not being sensitive to how I'm feeling. I remember one time he asked me, he was like, do you have to talk about every emotion you're experiencing in every moment? And my Scorpio moon is like, yes, I actually do.
I do.
Right. And I have some Gemini energy, Venus and Gemini. So there's the talking. I'm like, I want to go into the depths and I want to talk about like am I ever changing emotion, Scorpio transformation. And he's like, oh my gosh, can you have an emotion and not talk about it? And I'm like, no, I actually can't. And so there you see, there's my Scorpio moon. And then there's his Aquarian moon. And I love Aquarian moon people, such an amazing teacher for me.
Absolutely. It is so funny. I know we've got some questions and I'm going to feed them to you in just a second, but it's so funny. My husband has a Virgo moon and I have a Libra moon. And so it was so funny understanding both of these things. And I was like, oh, like, I feel like people literally speak their emotional processing style anyways, right? Because I'll say something to him and he'll say, well, let me just be with that. Right. And I'm like, oh, he's got to go earth that. And like, be, like be with it. And he'll say something to me and he's like, well, I mean, how do you feel about that? And I'm like, well, I think, right. And it's not like that I can't connect, head, heart, like it's not, there's no gap there, but it's how I get to the emotional processing with an air moon. And most air moons will tell you, well, I think, which means we're in the processing of sharing our emotional life with you, but you're gonna we speak it. And I absolutely love that about engaging with people, because I just feel like we speak our charts, whether we know it or not. And once you learn to listen and understand what a placement is saying to you, you can have such a different engagement with people around you. You know what I mean? And I do love Scorpio moons. They're like, well, I feel like it. I'm like, oh, okay, we got somewhere in here. There's exactly. Water moon.
And with my Scorpio moon, it took me a long time to realize, because I actually have Pluto with my moon, they're within 1 degree Pluto moon's conjunction. So it's intense, but there's also, and I've got some Pisces energy too, but I kind of felt like I'm very attuned to what other people are feeling, just empathing it. I'm deeply empathic, painfully so. So I kind of, because I feel like I can just feel someone's energy and be like, oh, what's going on? They're like, how'd you know? And so I thought everybody had that experience for a long time in my life. So I would get frustrated, especially my beautiful Aquarian moon person I was dating. I would get frustrated when I'm like, you can't just telepathically empath how I'm feeling, I was like, right. I was like, wait, no. Then I learned astrology. I'm like, that's more personal to my chart. Not everyone's having that experience.
I love that. Okay. So we've got a couple questions in the chat here. So the first one is, in terms of your moon sign placement, when you have a moon that is at 0 degrees or at that 29 degrees, which is more potent? I think that's a great question.
Yeah. So is the question, is there overlap between the signs, or just those critical degrees, 0 or 29?
It seems to me, let's answer the question from the critical degrees standpoint.
Okay. Gotcha. Yeah. I love that. Because I actually have planets at both in my own personal chart. So, 0 is the degree of infinite possibility. So it is like the quantum soup. It holds of every single sign. It's just pure potential. And it's you're moving into new learning at that 0 degree. So I think of it's the full card and the tarot deck. I call that the 0 degree kind of energy. It's you're just stepping off the cliff into the great unknown. You don't really know what you're stepping into, but there's infinite possibility. So I think of 0 degree as pure potential. So whatever archetype or whatever sign it's in, whether it's Leo or Scorpio or Virgo, you have pure, just infinite potential to kind of work with there. And then when it's at 29 degrees, really 27, 28, 29, those are kind of the critical degrees here. 29 is the anaretic degree. This is where you get the final initiation, the final learning lesson. So essentially by that point, it's you've had time to get familiar with the sign, to kind of get comfortable with that energy of the sign. And it's like, it's the final initiation. So the 29th degree, and I don't want to paint it this way, it can be a tough degree. And I have 29 planet degrees, because you're getting the final initiation. It's like, does your soul really self-master what this sign is all about? So the good, the underbelly of the sign as well, you're getting that final initiation. So really you're really kind of self-mastering the conscious maybe and unconscious expressions of that sign and transmuting it. And it's like moving into graduation, essentially, is what it is. That's kind of how I relate to that 0 and 29th degree. What about you? I'd love to hear your opinion. Stormie.
Yeah, I think in terms of the planets, that is exactly, my experience of it, and seeing people kind of have the expression of it. I do think that someone, the benefit, I guess, is that at 29 degrees, it's the final initiation, because you do have access to it. So it's like the toolbox is full. Now the question is, are you just using it? Now, the only thing lunar wise that I feel like my experience has been different is when somebody has a node that is at 29 degrees. There I'm like, you may be at the beginning point, because travel backwards. So it's like, now you get 0 degrees of a nodal point, which is very lunar, obviously.
Yeah.
And it's like at 0 degrees, you're killing it. Like you're probably, really tapped into that. So it's kind of like, if it's a planet, 29 is the meat and juicy, and 0 is the meat and juicy when you're looking at nodes.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Then that makes so much sense. And that's actually something I was contemplating on the nodes recently. And so I love that. I love that you brought that in here. And, the moon too, in particular, when we're talking about moon placement, I mean, it depends what, tradition of astrology that you're working with, but many traditions speak to the moon also, just like the South Node, because the lunar nodes they connect to the moon, where the orbit of the moon intersects with the ecliptic plane, that the moon can go back to past lives as well. And so I love, this is actually one of my favorite, the Shamanic Astrology Mystery School I love the book by Daniel Giamario and Kaylin Costell. They really talk about your moon is what you have a PhD in previous lifetimes, and it's also the working with the South Node of the moon as well. And so you can bring some of that context in as well. Like I actually had a reading with an astrologer from that tradition, and my Scorpio moon, they're like, oh, you already have a PhD in high magic with like your moon conjunct Pluto. And so, there's also you can also kind of bring in some context from perhaps a past life story as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's been my experience. And if you've not had the opportunity to look at your sun and certainly your lunar placements through the shamanic lens, I would highly recommend it. I mean, it's just, I don't know, it's different. The tradition and the explanation, I think, resonated with me in a different way.
Yeah, totally. And something I just read this about the moon. As I was kind of preparing for my class this week, I love to just go back and refresh myself and going back to some of the basics, but there's a quote in there, and Daniel Giamario really talks about, your moon, your moon is something you've really highly self-mastered in previous lifetimes, whatever that kind of main archetypal role is. And that in this lifetime, it's meant to be your foundation, right? Just like we talked about earlier, the foundation you're standing on, but it's essential to transform the moon for liberation in this lifetime. So if we just get stuck in our moon and cozy and comfortable and, I'm just going to do my moon thing, which is beautiful. We need to do that to some degree. If we're not willing to also step out of it, like use that foundation to support us to step out to, greater liberation in our lives, we can get stuck there in our moon placement.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. So I'm trying to see, I know there was another question and I just blew by it. Oh, how to work with a debilitated moon sign.
I have one.
Yeah. Moon in Capricorn, right?
So I love that. So the signs that would be are, So the moon rules Cancer. So Capricorn is the opposite sign. And I do mix up the, detriment and fall, the traditional terms, but that's Capricorn tends to be one, and then the moon is exalted in Taurus. So the opposite sign Scorpio is the other. So Capricorn and Scorpio and, traditional astrology, when you're working with essential dignity, and I do work with essential dignity, those would be the signs that, would be considered like a difficult moon or a debilitated moon. The terminology is not my favorite, but it's helpful to know. And simply the way I look at it is it means our moon is just going to operate differently than how the moon would operate, than how the moon would typically operate. Essentially, there's different learning. What essentially, and it can be, the moon's the moon is our deepest planet in many senses. It's the depth of our soul. It's our emotions. It's intimacy, bonding, attachment, safety, security. So the moon is super deep. And when the moon is just energetically in Capricorn or Scorpio, these two signs that are, considered an essential dignity to be debilitated, it's not a bad thing. So, and that's where the terminology, there's nothing wrong. It doesn't mean you're destined to have a difficult emotional experience your entire life, or that you can't have fulfillment with emotions or bonding or a sense of safety. But essentially, in order to have those things, there's just a different learning curve, essentially, is like for me. And if you just think about it, the moon is all about the feel good vibes, right? Safety, security, comfort, bonding, attachment, nourishment. So the moon likes those things. Like, for example, just Scorpio, Scorpio is the sign of death, rebirth, transformation, regeneration. Scorpio is this constant, this is where my moon was at. It's this constant death and rebirth energy. And the moon is like, wait, Scorpio's decided transformation. The moon's like, wait, I just want to hold on and be comfy and cozy. And then the Scorpio is like, you're just going to have constant like death and rebirth of your soul, and it's like so intense. That's where my moon, and it's intense. Scorpio is the depth of our emotion. So it's the depth of our waters, the depth of our inner realm that not everyone's going to see. It's so, so deep. It's the depth of our soul. And so to have your moon there, it's Scorpio moon. People tend to feel emotions so deeply and so intensely. It's like you can feel emotions so intensely. It's like, I feel like I'm going to die, because I'm feeling things so intensely, feeling so raw and tender and vulnerable, so it's a big initiation. So essentially, if you have a planet or your moon in Scorpio or Capricorn, there's a different learning curve to have fulfillment, to have nurturance. What makes you feel nurtured and nourished? There's just a different learning curve. And there's also the challenges become your greatest gift. Like for Scorpio, for example, I feel so deeply and so intensely. Sometimes it literally feels like a curse sometimes, and people don't always see it. I can have my Leo rising kind of presence. I have my sun in the 9th house anyways. And then I just go home and it's like, just like bawling, crying. And I feel so deeply and so intensely. And, it's like, I'm alone and no one understands. But what that's done is that's given me an incredible gift to hold deep, deep emotional space for others. Right. There's nothing somebody can go through that I can't be there and go through them with them and hold that space for them. And so that's like the gift. So there's incredible gifts to that. And, and the Capricorn moon, we'll talk about that. And I have a lot of Capricorn moon people in my life, Capricorn moons, there's a stoic energy oftentimes to a Capricorn moon. And the moon in Cancer, the moon wants to flow and emotions to flow and let them out. And Capricorn moons often have this great responsibility with emotions. It's like oftentimes, and I've actually found this with Capricorn people, I'm like, wait, I don't feel like you're like feeling me or you're, sharing in the emotional experience. They do feel deeply, but there's a stoicism. There's this responsibility. They often have this responsibility to be the solid person for everyone and everything in their life. And Capricorn moons often had to take on great, great responsibility from a young age, where oftentimes as well. And so sometimes it can feel like, wait, I had to grow up too soon and take on all this responsibility. But there's also, so there's a gift to it as well. The Capricorn moons tend to have be amazing, take amazing leadership roles, have this emotional equanimity in chaotic situations where they can just stay in their zone and be that support, be the leader in those situations. So that was my Pisces Mercury way of going off on long tangents. But essentially, yeah, the moon will operate differently. And there's a different learning curve. And so also, what do you need for nurturance and emotional self-care? It's going to be a little bit differently. So as well as maybe than in some of the other signs. And so that's something to really consider as well. But there's incredible gifts to both of those signs. I'd love to hear what you have to share on that, Stormie.
Yeah, no, it's exactly that. And I was thinking two things. First of all, if you're hearing dignity and debility and you're kind of new and you're like, what in the world? Make sure you jump back into the playlist that's on the home page of this channel. And Melissa LaFara did our class on dignities and debilities. So even if you've been practicing for a while, but you hadn't really gotten into that, go back and listen on what states are in and what signs will make a planet in dignity or debility so that you can get sorted there first. That's a great place to start there. And she does highlight just exactly what you're saying, Jamie, is that it's like, while it may not be the most comfortable arrangement for that planet, because the planet has to get on board to do things the way the sign has dictated, right? So it is like, appreciate your suggestions, but we're going to be doing it this way. So you have that sense of it, and it can just mean that the conversation needs to be happening or the condition is a little bit different, but it empowers. It also is where you will be empowered because other people that have that resonance are going to understand that. It's almost like, I think about it, I have to make things very physical, but it's like, I remember having this conversation with this guy, and he had forever been a runner, and he was doing that, and he ran with runners, right? Like they're just out there running, and he ended up getting into an accident, lost one of his legs, and still wanted to be a runner. And in the beginning, he did not feel comfortable just getting out there running with traditional runners. So he started to run with a group of runners who had lost their legs and were starting to learn to run. And he felt such relation and comfortability, right? And so it's like I think about planets in the same way, like find your squad, like how can you relate? And that you become a helper, you instantly become a helper to those around you. By doing that, by understanding whether, even if your planet is exalted, right, you are able to help bring out exaltation in people as well. So I loved your explanation. I thought it was very good.
Oh, thank you. Yes. And I love that question because I have my Scorpio moon, which is in that, considered debilitated.
Right. But at the same time, you hold deep, beautiful space for people and you're like gonging them back to life.
And I love that. And, also like, just for example, one of the other gifts of a Scorpio moon, I've seen it with other Scorpio moons, the emotional like alchemy, the emotional transformation you can create just by going into the emotions and feeling them and transmuting them. I mean, there's such a power there. And the Capricorn moons have their own gifts as well. I found just leadership to be such an amazing, to be that rock solid person with the Capricorn moons.
Yeah, I love Capricorn moon people because they are quite practical actually too, right? There's a practicality that comes to it where it is like, okay, if I feel this, what do I achieve?
Totally. Right? Yes.
Right.
And then my Scorpio moon is just like, rah!
Right. Your Scorpio moon is like, just feel it to feel it. Capricorns are like, no. Listen, what do I achieve by feeling through this? Or what am I trying to get to? Which is really, really
absolutely the discipline as well. And also that, pragmaticism about like, what do I do with the emotion? How am I expressing it?
Right. Like, what do I do with it? Because I can feel all the things I need to feel.
Yeah.
But where do I demonstrate emotional mastery of it in my life, which I think is incredible. So somebody asks how to understand or deal with a moon that is sitting in the 12th house.
I love that. Well, first off, I would say my number one thing is make sure you give yourself lots of time for retreat and rest and stillness and quiet and downtime. When we have a 12th house planet, we tend to need more of that. And it's the moon. So that's going to be really like in the 12th house, giving yourself finding what is retreat to you. And oftentimes, the 12th house is like the house of spirit. So what nourishes your spirit, essentially, whether it's meditation, whether it's yoga or dancing, or it depends what sign it is. Maybe it's an earth sign. Maybe for you, that's actually being out in the forest, nature bathing, whatever it is. But, having that time for retreat, I think is really important with a 12th house moon. Now, one of the gifts I often see with 12th house moons is incredible intuitive skills or psychic skills, being connected to the unseen realm and being able to, the moon, it's like receiving, it's the satellite picking up on the unseen information. And there's a gift to that as well. And also making sure, I think as well, having really great, I call it like, energetic or spiritual hygiene as well, because you might also be just picking up on things just as you're going throughout, going through the grocery store or wherever and picking up on all this energy. So to have really great, what do you need to do to cleanse, whether it's, for me, it's like getting in a salt bath or, whatever you do to cleanse your energy. I think that can be really important as well. Now with the moon in the 12th house, one of the other things when we have 12th house planets, sometimes I found, so the moon, think of emotional needs, your self-care needs. What do you need for self-nourishment? Sometimes a 12th house planet, it's not always conscious to us. So I've actually found, I've read lots of charts with people with 12th house moons, and sometimes it's like, wait, I don't actually know what my emotional needs are, or I don't know what I need for self-care. It might be, it's like, we're just attuning to everybody else around them, that it's like, wait, my needs are your needs, or my partner's needs, or my child's needs, or whoever. And so it can be really amazing to bring a lot of conscious awareness through like reflection and contemplation. What are your emotional needs? What do you need for authentic, like self-care? What is truly self-nourishing for you? Because sometimes it can be like a blind spot where it's like, oh, I don't know. So that can be really important as well, because sometimes there is like a blind spot in our psyche with 12th house planets. And even just some of the emotional, we all have them. These are our lunar things, our habits, our patterns that we deal with emotions. We get triggered, and this is our habit, our pattern dynamic, or this is our habit, pattern, and dynamic for emotional comfort. And we tend to all have healthy ones, and we all have ones that aren't so supportive as well. But when there's a 12th house planet, sometimes there are more blind spots in the psyche. So just taking some time to notice, this is my habit and pattern. It's really just bringing awareness to 12th house planets does so much. Those are a few things that came to me. What about you, Stormie?
Yeah. That's kind of what I was thinking that too, is that you might actually have to just have more solitude time. Like you kind of need to get maybe behind the scenes to feel through, whatever's going on there and get into the processing of it. Or the other thing is that you may naturally process information between the worlds and need more sleep time. Dream can be a phenomenal vehicle for 12th house moon interpretation, or 12th house planet interpretations, I think, kind of in general. So we've got a couple more questions for Jamie. You guys, we're going to try and get to them. So Jamie, how do we handle a T-square where it's the sun and moon in opposition? The apex is at the ascendant.
Okay. So, and then I guess may or may not be the sun and moon, maybe with the midheaven icy, but maybe not as well. So, depending on the degrees, but so sun and moon opposition with a T-square with the ascendant. And also, it could be a cross with the descendant as well, if you're playing with the descendant as well, but the ascendant is more of what we're taking on in a personal level. So, so anytime there's a T-square that that apex is like, it's like that bow and arrow that's getting pulled back. It creates this pressurized energy between, it actually creates more pressurized energy between the opposition, which can already be kind of a push pull, so you're a full moon, essentially, if you're born with your sun and moon opposition, which is this being born with this beautiful signature of illumination, and it's just being in full expression. I love it. So essentially the apex, like the ascendant, becomes a mediator essentially between the opposition of the sun and moon, but it can be through a lot of internal friction and tension, and that's actually what gets the energy going to release it. And so the release point would actually, it's more of I guess I would say more of a cross actually than a T-square, kind of how I would interpret it. But essentially, gosh, and it's so hard to know, like, without knowing the signs. And like,
I know that's complicated, right?
But I guess what I would say is, and actually what I would be more curious about is the sun closer to the icy or the midheaven? And is the moon more closer to the icy or the midheaven? Like, that would actually have a big influence in my interpretation. But essentially, just if I could, what a short way of saying that would be your ascendant, your vehicle of expression out into the world. This is like your magic of really expressing that beautiful alchemy of being born with a full moon, which is the signature of, the moon's in full expression, the moon is in full light. From just a lifetime signature perspective, being born with a full moon, you're here to express yourself, and so your ascendant is like the vehicle of doing that. That's one of those I feel like I'd really have to look at the chart and get more. I'd love to hear what you have to share on that, Stormie.
Yeah, that's what I was going to just say too, is like at the apex point, truly you experience the shadow sides of the characteristics of your sun and moon signs, if you're not allowing it to be seen, if you're not allowing it to be a part of the expression of the ascendant. Because if not, squares can actually just ask us to take action, and proper evolved action would change the expression and even probably the feeling of that particular activation. And I would also wonder too, because it is the apex is the ascendant, if you struggle at some level of coming out of whatever that ascending energy is. So maybe look at it through that lens, which is interesting, kind of leads to the next question. And we're going to do one more question after that. But this person said, with people who have a moon in Gemini, what is critical for them to learn?
Well, Gemini moons tend to be such a, like we talked about, the air sign moons, like verbal processors about their emotions. So Gemini moons, tend to really need healthy relationships where there's space to talk about your emotions and verbally process it through. Now, the kind of initiation is to how to actually, like you said, Stormie, it's that process. And it's actually really important. It's important to have that verbal processing of the moon, the mental processing of the moon. But sometimes there can be a tendency to just stay up in the heady realm, the mental realm. So to really give your space to feel the emotions, how to kind of bring the emotions and hold space for the emotions and feel the emotions as well. With maybe even without the mental story. And the mental story is important for you Gemini moons, but to how to feel the emotion as well without getting caught in the emotional story or the mental story of the moon, because stories, they are stories, and there's lots of different, and this is Gemini, right? There's lots of different perspectives with Gemini. So what story am I telling? Am I caught in the lens of the story of, maybe somebody made fun of me for something when I was a kid, so now I have the story about that. Am I caught in that story, or am I being the author of my life as well? And so I think that's important to just be aware of, is stories. With what stories are you saying around your emotions? Because we are the authors of our life. And with our moon, we tend to really, we tend to stay in the stories that, that essentially we took on maybe the first 7 years of our life or so. And so I think that's important. Like, what stories are we saying? What stories are we telling ourselves about what we're feeling?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think it's important in relation with other people to let them know that
Yeah.
you need words. You're like, I need some words to
Yeah.
express this. And the other thing that I think is really important if you have specifically a Gemini moon is to look at your internal life. Make sure you are taking stock kind of what's going on so that you don't have a whole bunch of emotional little projects, right?
Yeah.
Or emotional
Yeah.
things going on that you're not actually tending to, because Gemini is a mutable energy. So the tendency is to worry. So if you have a worry moon, if you have a mutable moon, the more unresolved things you've got that you haven't taken stock of, it can create anxiety. I mean, it's like a perfect position for anxiety. So if you've got a Gemini moon, what do you need to like kind of bring some ending to, and what do you need to be taking stock of so you don't have all these little emotional things like going?
Oh, I love that. Yeah. Cause there can be that busyness to sometimes kind of, ooh, I'll just move that energy by being busy and that will make me feel good. But then it's like the emotion is still wanting your attention on an inner level and grounding. I find that so helpful for that Gemini energy because it is that, and I have strong Gemini energy. It is flighty and mutable. And so to come and ground and actually, have somewhere for like the anxiety to move through, like into the earth, through your feet, into the earth, that can be so helpful.
Yes, absolutely. So let's answer this last question, which is actually just very practical. Somebody was asking about the name and the title of the shamanic book that you were
Oh yeah, I actually have
talking
it right.
about.
I have it right here. Oh wait, maybe not. I don't have it right here. It's the Shamanic Astrology Handbook, and it's by Daniel Giamario and Kaylin Costal. And like you said, Stormy, it's a very it's a different tradition than many other traditions of astrology, and I've really integrated it into a lot of what I do. But I also work with traditional astrology and evolutionary astrology. I've got a lot of mutable energy, but it's an amazing, the archetypes of each of the signs is just my favorite go-to to kind of get a better understanding of the archetypes of each of the signs. I love how they work with that.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that whatever your lens of practice is, or however astrology is thinking and moving through you, spend time with the archetypes and see what they literally feel like
Yeah.
to you, right? Like, what does that mean to you? Where can you locate at your local grocery store? Where can you see Gemini or Mercury in action? Like, allow it to be this tasty experience of these energies. And then when you bring it to your chart or the chart work, it has a completely different feel to it as opposed to just Moon and Gemini means. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But at the same time, if you're new here, I just want to encourage you, if you're still just even getting a basic understanding, like, yeah, get in here. Get in here. The learning starts somewhere,
Oh my,
right?
it's so much fun. And I love that you said that, because once you start learning the archetypes of the planets and the signs, you see it everywhere. Like I
Yeah.
am obsessed with coffee shops. I love the vibe. I love the energy. I have Venus in Gemini, and I'm like, coffee shops are the most Gemini place. And my nervous system, I cannot drink caffeine. Actually, I have a neurological disorder. So like I can't, but I love the vibe. It's like so buzzy and chatter, and they're like the most Gemini places. And I'm like, so you see the archetypes come alive everywhere.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I couldn't agree with you more. So, Jamie, I want to thank you first of all for coming, for teaching for us the first time and bringing us, like, your class is absolutely delicious and thorough. And I think really giving such a good place for people to work, but then also coming back and spending more time with us to just answer questions and be here with us.
Oh, thank you so much, Stormy. It's truly an honor. I'm such a big fan of you. I've looked up to you for so many, years to learning astrology. So I'm just so grateful to be here with you. And I'm just so grateful for what you've created, this incredible learning, sharing your immense wisdom, and then also inviting all of these astrology teachers in. I mean, it's just like delicious what you've created.
Delicious, which is perfect. I love that. Okay, you guys. So listen, If you haven't had a chance to watch Jamie's class, click in the description box of this video and it's going to take you right back to her class itself. Share that video with people who are learning, or share it with people in your life who could love a little bit more on their sun and their moon. Like, like it, share it, watch it. This is why we created this. And then also you can click into the playlist and see there are 52. There were supposed to be 12 classes. You guys have to really get what happened. There were supposed to be 12 classes and there ended up being 52 classes walking you through the basics and continuing to advance you. So check out the playlist also in the description box down below. We will be back July 6th going over Kathy Rose's class. So make sure you're checking that out. Watch the website. You can always click in the description box here in the website and the syllabus to where we're going next with our teachers. And this year will be down there. And of course, reach out to Jamie, all of her contact information, her class. Maybe you're going to go get gonged till your eyes are a different color with Miss Jamie. It's all in the description box down below. So we love you guys a ton. We'll see you on the socials, see you around here, hopefully see you in conferences, in person, all of the places, right?
Yeah.
All right, you guys, I love you and we'll see you next time.